Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for an all new episode recap of today's Daysofourlives, August 29th, 2025. So we start off with Kat and Kayla. So Kat wants Kayla to put in a good word for her because she wants to apply for a position at the hospital. Particularly, an administrative position, but nothing was available, so she ended up applying for the hospital cafeteria. So Kayla's saying that she's overqualified because she used to work for Dr. Marlena, and she's more than willing to put in a good word for her and be a reference, but she's just wondering why she doesn't try to apply for somewhere else. She doesn't have to work at the university hospital. But Kat want to cover up and say that she just like working here, she like the employees and environment. And Kayla said, okay, I'll sign off on that, right? At some point, EJ does come up, and EJ asks Kayla, like, is my office ready for me? So she said, yes, it's ready. Of course, it's never no love lost between those two. And at some point, Kat sees EJ and tries to, catch up to him, right? Now, Leo is catching up to Chad, just with everything that went wrong with the trial and how he wasted a whole month and then he didn't get to deliver the verdict. Just basically just being very annoying and all about himself. It's just was really not an interesting scene apart from him just talking about how he doesn't buy the whole Kristen confessing, because Kristen is not the type to confess what she has done wrongly. It's just very weird how this trial ended. So Chad is asking him if he could cover her sentencing hearing, and he said he wouldn't miss it for the world. He's all for the drama and all of that. So he's talking about having a tell all as well. And yeah, that was really it with this scene. I really didn't care much for Leo and him just whining about how, he wasted a month of his life doing the jury duty and all of that and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't really that interesting. Earlier, Gwen was reading the headlines about Kristen confessing, and she just can't believe that Kristen would go through this route. EJ comes in and she's talking to EJ about how she can't believe her good friend Kristen really confessed to something, especially after she overheard Leo saying that they were going to come back with a not guilty verdict for his son. So, EJ saying maybe she had a change of heart. She didn't want her nephew going down for something. And even the most, you know, immoral people do have, maybe a moral breaking point. And she said, I suppose so. She just doesn't understand how Kristen would do this at risking losing that relationship with her daughter and going away for so long, right? At some point, later on in the episode, they do talk again, and she's back with some shopping bags, and he's like, it must be nice to be, spending somebody else's money and all of that. So she said, it has its perks and all of that. He does tell her about Kat Green, that she's gonna be working for him. So that's something that we're gonna discuss later in the recap. She also said that Kat Green is now a new friend of hers, and she is definitely getting interested to getting to know her, right? He just saying, what about me? So she said, oh no, we're not there at friends yet, but I really like their conversations. I feel like they can be so much more. I like them together. What do you guys think? So Brady and Tate are talking, but Brady saw the headlines with Kristen, and of course, he's bothered by it, on how it's affecting their daughter. And Rachel, is definitely not up to anything at all because of what is going on with her mother. Tate comes in, he's coming from a run, they're checking in, and Tate is asking how Rachel's doing after she went to, shop for food for a pet lizard or snake or whatever. And he's saying to him that, look, um, Rachel definitely perked up when she saw Sarah, but after that, she still was in a mood, and she's still worried about what's gonna happen to her mom. And Tate is saying, maybe I need to not go to university, like stay on the dorm. Maybe I need to be home with Rachel. And Brady doesn't want him to miss out on his college experience. He can always come home on the weekends and holidays. And Tate is also suggesting Holly come over since they used to be close at the Demare Mansion, and if only she's not near the pet snake, because she has a fear of snakes and all of that. He also tells Brady about, he's worried about working at the pub because, for one thing, It's not even about his experience there before or his skills. It's just that he has to work alongside Sophia. And, Brady's surprised that Sophia is actually working there because, you know, he didn't realize that they'd be working together. So Tate is saying that, I guess she wants to move forward from the whole baby adoption thing. And, you know, it was just a coincidence that this happened. And, yeah, no, that was it. So Holly comes over to the pub and she sees Sophia, and Sophia's like, back again so soon. So she said, yeah, I'm here to make an order. So she said, okay, what can I get you? So she said, I need a moment with you. So she said she's kind of busy. So she said it won't be long. So she sits down and she's saying, like, what do you want to talk about? So she said, I want to talk about how it's so coincidental that you applied for a job after Tate first applied for one here. And she said, are you paranoid much? Remember, I told you that my mom saw the help wanted sign and I applied for it. And I'm just trying to move forward and everything. And she said, it's just a load of BS because you knew Tate was going to work here and you just wanted to come here. And I'm just warning you just to stay away from my boyfriend because you tried to come between us before and it succeeded. I don't want this to happen again. So, of course, Sophia saying that he's the father of my child. We're always going to be close. I'm always going to care about him. So, it's nothing more, nothing less. So, Holly's just saying, you just got to just stay away. Just watch what you're doing, right? At some point, Tate comes in and Tate's like, everything all right? So Holly said, yes, I was just, waiting on you to congratulate you on your first day. I would like to be your first customer. He serves her. Of course, she's trying to make Sophia jealous as she kisses him before he goes on his shift. At some point, they're goofing around with each other, and Sophia comes with a plate of dishes because she needs help. Again, trying to one up on Holly, and it's just back and forth over this guy, which I don't understand. What's the big deal? At some point, Leah does come in with her sorrow, and Sophia turns her back because she doesn't want to face the baby. Tate is saying, I can cover the shift, you can take a break. She's just saying it's so hard, and then she hugs Tate, and Holly's looking over, and I'm saying, yeah, this is definitely not gonna end well. So Brady goes over to Steve and he said, I'm sorry I come back a little bit earlier, but I just want to know if he had any more information. So Steve said, it's hard to go off anything without a court order. I'm going to need some piece of information. So Brady said he wished that he got a copy of the adoption agreements when Tate had them and signed them when Sophia was there. It's just something doesn't add up because Sophia came over there with no baby. He doesn't know the adopted parent's name. And I'm saying, shame on you, Brady, because you're the adult, you're the parent in this. You didn't check to see the document if it was legally, well, you didn't see if it wasn't, it was legit. I don't understand you, Brady. And for one thing, you should have insisted to meet the adopted parents as the adult in this situation, right? You can't expect Tate to really think these things through, but you as the adult. But then again, we're talking about Brady Black here, who doesn't have much brain cells to think through things. But for once, he's actually following up and meeting up with Steve. So maybe let's give him some credit, right? So, anyways, he does find a lawyer information and he calls the lawyer and the lawyer is on voicemail. So he said that he's going to meet up with the person to see what happens, right? At some point he does meet up with the lady and the lady was about to call him, and he asks for help with a adoption case that happened earlier this month. And she's saying, what's the name of the person? He said it's my son, Tate Black. So she doesn't know who this person is. So now it's a lot of questions up with this case, right? Before Leo went into the pub, he actually ran into Gwen, and of course, it's always a nasty interaction. And he's saying, "Oh, you're shopping all over, huh?" So she's saying, "I have to do what I have to do." So he's like, "Spending all of your husband's money, huh?" So she said, "Yeah, it keeps me warm at night." So this point, they're going back and forth trading barbs, and of course, Gwen still has to remind Leo that he slept with her husband and how she can't forgive him and they can't be friends, even though Leo is still trying to be desperate about this and want to rekindle their friendship, want to have what it used to be before this and like start afresh. So, she said she doesn't want to do that because at the end of the day, like she doesn't want to be reminded of the type of friend he was and did all that, unscrupulous thing to her, being with her husband behind her back. And he's saying, look, I wish for you to be happy as me, like I am with Harvey. I wish for you to find somebody that actually is going to love you, that is straight. So even though he didn't mean it that way, he's trying to not make a dig or anything like that, right? So, he's asking her why she in Salem. It's not like she still has the necklace. Why is she there? So she said, you find out soon enough and enjoy your happiness while it lasts. So of course I think she is up to something and she's trying to make Leo pay for what he did to her. But gosh, Gwen, you need to move on and stop being so miserable and take the chip off his shoulder like it's not cute. Chad also talked to Kayla because he brought a paper for, Kayla to sign because apparently Charlotte is starting kindergarten and she did her annual checkup and, he brought a doctor's note for her to sign. So she just is surprised that Charlotte is starting kindergarten. It's just the other day she was born. Then she asked him how is he doing because remember he had to be quarantined with Cat and he contracted infection and everything and he didn't want to bring it home to the children. So she said it must have been miserable to be cooped up together, but of course Chad is reminiscing about that kiss that he had with Cat and all of that. So he said it was cool and he's just glad that the antibiotics worked and they all are better, and that was really it with them. So Kat is also talking to EJ because she ran up to him to just ask if he has an open job position since he's gonna be in a new office. So he said he already has an assistant, but then again, Rita is like a right hand woman to him, so he definitely needs somebody who can do the minor administrative duties, the calendar, the setting appointments. So she said she has experience in that, but he also doesn't feel like he should be working with her because months ago they were supposed to go on a date for this auction and Chad was not having it because he doesn't want Kat involved with him, seeing that he's the devious older brother. And she said, are you devious? So he said, some of it may be true, but Chad, how he was feeling, he doesn't want me to be working with you and maybe you should stay that way. So she said at the end of the day I'll make Chad understand, and I do need a job because I do have two younger siblings I'm taking care of and I do have the experience. I would be glad to be working for you and all of that. So he takes a look at her resume and he said there's some missing blanks, missing space between the time she was working and, prior. So she said, remember, I had a car accident and, I had to be there for my family. So he said, oh, you've just definitely had a lot going on. So anyways, he does agree to hire her and she is thankful for that. She's on the phone with Rafe and she said, it were all worked out because now she has a job and also she gets to keep an eye on EJ while at the hospital, right? So while she's talking, Chad overhears her and eavesdrops and says, um, what job? So she comes out the phone pretending it's her mom. So she says to him that I'll be working for your brother. So he said, no, you can't do that. I told you that he hurts everybody, even intentionally, unintentionally sometimes. So she said, look, I'm grown. I can take care of myself. You don't have to worry about me, right? So again, he said, you've been warned, but again, it's none of his concern. Like, why do you care that much? She can handle herself. So anyway, Steve comes over to Kayla and Steve is talking to her about Sophia and the baby. And even though she can't really say much because she did see her in the earlier phase, she can't really tell Steve as usual because of the confidentiality. So he said, I know that, but Brady came to me because he's very suspicious about this whole adoption case and how she referred to the baby as a him when it's supposed to be a her. And then, he spoke to Sarah and Sarah was cagey, like she had some other information that she wasn't about to tell Brady. So he's asking Kayla if she can look into it. So at some point she looks into it and he's saying, does this give me the right to investigate further? Am I right about certain things? So she said, I know that you definitely have a lot of intuition, so I'm not gonna say you should or shouldn't, right? So basically that's just saying in code, go investigate, see what you're gonna find out, right? So that is it, guys. Comment below your thoughts on today's episode. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to my channel. I will see you guys tomorrow.